We're going to start with Buke and Gase with their third studio album called Scholars. They are from Hudson, New York, and they play an experimental indie rock kind of thing. And they're quite interesting. So it's a duo. It is Aaron Dyer, I hope I've pronounced that first name right, and Aaron Sanchez to make things extra awkward. Dyer is the vocalist, and she plays a Buke, which is a modified 6-string baritone ukulele. And Sanchez plays a Gase, hence the name, and is a guitar-bass hybrid. And they make a full band sound with effects and pedals on their instruments and their vocals. And they also have a bunch of foot instruments. So they've got a toe tambourine. I watched some live footage and they've got like a bass drum pedal that they just have in front of them, and they sometimes have like a snare attached as well. And more recently, I think for this album, they've engineered something called the Arcs. It is a multi-instrument electronic control system, which I think can just do like loops and effects and other such electrical bass musicianship. And with all that combined, it's not, despite the fact there's only two of them, it is not empty sounding at all. You wouldn't have guessed that there's only two of them without reading about them. So it starts off with a low drum psychedelia influenced crawler. It's called Stumbler. It's almost hypnotic in its vocal execution. It's very, in the background you've got like very plodding drums, and it's the way she sort of like chants a mantra at you. It's very, very fun. It's not indicative as the album as a whole, but then I was thinking about it. No one song is. If you take any one of these songs out of the album, there's no way of figuring out what the entire album is. There's a lot of different genres going on, lots of different ideas. Obviously, as the name suggests, lots of different experiments, and it's quite unique based on the fact that they are not really. Well, I guess yeah, they are making their own instruments and like making it. I was going to say make it up as they go along. That sounds really mean. That's not what I meant. It's all very DIY. It's all very, this is what they wanted, not really going to adhere to what other people would want them to do. And for me, it's track 2, which is the title track, called obviously Scholars. That's where the album, for me, properly begins. And in there, it's got a lot of the different genres and musical types that's going to be found throughout the album. So there's lots of art folk in there, lots of pop, stoner, lots of indie sounding music. And it shows off Aaron's vocal range. And the thing that really popped out to me is other experimental bands that I listen to rely a bit too much, and because they're experimental, they feel like they can get away with a lot more, so they can get away with having weird and wacky vocals, like the Venean Process, Octave, which I reviewed last year, and Diablo Swing Orchestra. They do like to have like weird effects and just like sing oddly, if that makes sense. Whereas this is moments like that are very few and far between. As a whole, Aaron's voice. Aaron in general just has a lot more control over her voice, and she knows how to use it. She knows when to sing. She knows when to hit the higher notes. She knows when to be a little bit more kooky. She's very intelligent on how to use a voice in this kind of setting. And parts of the song, like throughout the album, the Buke that it's gonna get very confusing. I'm just trying to stick to the last name. So the Buke that Aaron Sanchez plays, it kind of reminds me of like the low, like the muted notes. You know when, like from Apocalyptica, when they're doing like more verse riffs and it's just like the palm muted. It's not strumming, is it? Is it strumming? Whatever it is cellos do, they're like dum 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 dum. You can tell I'm not a musician, can't you? Anyways, into Derby, just to ignore all of that. Derby takes it into a completely different direction again. Stumbler and Scholars had a much more dark feeling about them, whereas Derby is a lot more laid back. It's got like a reggae brass rhythm to it, and it edges a little bit closer to pop than the other songs did. And then the album probably picks up again at around track 7 at Grips. again, Dyer's voice really steals the show on this song a lot, especially on the chorus. It's a low key, broody verse into this big, vocally powerful chorus. It kind of reminds me of Gold Key, with Thingy Stairs, Lags from Gallows, and that sort of thing. It's a fucking great album. I highly recommend you listen to that as well. The final third, I must admit, of the album is kind of hit and miss. No Land is the level of dark, moody pop that can be seen in the mainstream. I think that is like, outside of Flock, that is like one of the better moments on the final third. It can be I've compared to like Lordy and Tovalo, because it is like I said, dark and broody, but it is hugely accessible. But yeah, the ultimate highlight in the latter portion of the album is Flock. It's very bassy electropop, and at this point, if you hadn't forgotten already, this song will make you forget that there's only two people in there. And yeah, the Muddy Water lyric in it will get stuck in your head for a very long time. Overall, I quite enjoy this album. I haven't given it justice by my words, but then I never do. But I really enjoy this album. It will take a couple of listens if you are unfamiliar with like the weirder end of music, which is, it's fine. I got there in the end. You can hear how small my brain is. There's just a lot going on, and it's very interesting, the musical setup that Dyer and Sanchez has. You think about it, it is only two. And when I saw, like I said, footage of them playing live, and it's still just the two of them. They don't have, or at least the shows I watched, they don't have like backing musicians just to help out or anything like that. Everything is done by just those two, and I think it's really interesting. For the fans of Part, I compared them to Gold Key earlier. I still would, the way Dyer, there we go. The way Dyer controls her voice and uses her voice, it reminds me a lot of Gold Key, which, like I said, mentioned earlier. In terms of like this weirder end of music, I did have to do a bit of searching, and I found a lot of crossover with a band called Era, E-E-R-A, so if you're familiar with them. Also Marnie Stern, which I have listened to before, and again, yeah, I think there's a lot of good crossover there. So Gold Key, Era, and Marnie Stern. You'll go for Buke and Gase with their third album, Scholars.